speaker is a fantastic coworker of mine, named Sarah Lesh. She's a front-end web developer at HJC, and we work on lots of projects together. She is a graduate. Sarah is a graduate of the coding program at hackerYou. And as well, what I think is particularly interesting about Sarah is she is a stand-up comedian as well. So, super funny.
Pressure's on.
But not enough, fine. She doesn't have a set prepared, she might not be funny, but she'll try. There was that. I don't think that helps. Okay. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to take over.
Thanks, Farah.
Yeah, no problem. I'll get out of your way.
Yeah, and I can take it here. So hi everyone online. So yeah, as Farah said, my name's Sarah. I work at HJC as a web developer. I also teach web development at Ladies Learning Code, and I mentor at hackerYou. So just with my time so far as a web developer, I'm pretty new to the industry. I've been doing it for about 1.5 years, and I've watched a bunch of people just get their feet started with it, and it can seem really overwhelming. Hence my title, HTML, CSS, WTF. You hear a lot of things, you see a lot of things, and it's hard to really know what you should know, what you shouldn't know, how you should be doing things. So hopefully I'll be clearing things up for you a bit today. So I thought I'd start off with a meme. I should warn you that I'm a big meme fan, so there's going to be a few of these in here. So when I first started on the internet, this is kind of how I felt, just like, I'm a dog, what do I do on a computer? So I'm going to start off by kind of describing what actually a website is. So actually, at its most basic level, a website is just a collection of files inside folders that visitors can view when they type something into their URL in a browser. These files are just pulled through the network and then displayed to you. So I know that still sounds really confusing. So when I'm working locally, so what that means is on my own computer, I'll have a file structure that looks something like this here. So I'm going to actually open up a file. That's a website. Oh, I actually have it open over here. So if you look at this file structure, it's saying go into the user Sarah Lesh, inside the folder called desktop, inside Net Tuesdays, which is what I have it called over here, Net Tuesdays, and find my website.html. So I'm done this website, it's very beautiful, and I'm going to put it online. And how I do that is I use something called a file transfer protocol, or FTP. Actually logged me out here, so let me just log myself back in. Oh, you know what? Sometimes that doesn't work. There we go. So, my list of directories here is very similar to my list of directories on my computer here. It's just actually on the internet. So instead of it saying Sarah Lesh, user Sarah Lesh, I'm going to be putting this on sarahlesh.com. So I'm just going to drag my Net Tuesdays folder over to my FTP. It's putting it all up there. It tells me it's successful. So now if I visit sarahlesh.com /NetTuesdays/ my website, let me make sure I'm spelling it properly. .html. My website's there. So really, I hope that breaks things down a little bit easier of what a website actually is. It's just folders that live on the internet. So let's start with HTML. So HTML is the language that every website is built in. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And it's actually what you would use as the structure of your website. So similarly, if you were to structure a house, you would build the structure of the house first, and the structure of the house would contain kind of like the layout of everything. Our HTML in this way is similar. It kind of defines the content, it defines the flow, and it makes it semantic to how your website is going to flow, the same way how you would build a house and you build it in a specific way, but you're not actually putting any design elements into the structure of the house. That all comes later. So with our HTML, just like in writing, we define headers, we define paragraphs, we define quotes, we define lists. All that happens within our HTML. And the structure and the markup of the content is really important for understanding the document, not just for us readers, but also for browsers reading it, and very importantly for screen readers. Often I find there's a lot of websites out there that get developed just kind of very blasé, and screen readers can't read the code because it's not quite semantic. Do you guys know what I mean when I say semantic code? No? Do you guys know what semantic writing would be if you were writing semantic English language? It kind of means you're using, for example, the right punctuation, you're using the question marks in the right spots, quotation marks in the right spots. So with HTML, you also have semantic code. So if I have a heading for my website here, this heading here, that's the most important heading on my website, so that would be heading 1. If I want something down here to be styled the same way as this, it doesn't matter that it's styled the same way, it still shouldn't be a heading 1, because that will confuse the browser into thinking it's also equally as important. So that's kind of what I mean, and this will make a little bit more sense later. Typically, all HTML documents will be saved as .html. The same way if you were to save a Word document, you would save it as .doc. These just get saved as a different file extension, and then that is how the browser knows to render it as an HTML document. So let's break down some real HTML. So the anatomy of HTML. HTML is made up of elements that describe our content. So we create these elements by wrapping our content in tags. This is a tag, this is a tag, this is our content, and everything put together, that's an element. Most HTML elements will have an opening and a closing tag. So our opening tag will have a little angle bracket, the name of the element, and then a closing angle bracket. You have your content inside, and then the closing bracket looks the exact same as the opening bracket, but with just a little backslash before it. Backslash in coding often just means end. Usually if you see it around, even in most coding languages, it just means end. So let's look at a website that I have actually coded. So here I have my H1. So this is the same website as this right here. So there's my H1. It's my most important heading, so it's my H1 tag. I have my opening, my content, and then my closing right here. We'll go back to that in a bit. There's a few exceptions to this opening tag and closing tag rule. There's a couple of HTML elements that are called self-closing elements. And how you can recognize the difference is that anything that the content exists within the element itself, so for example, an image tag, that would be a self-closing tag. I'll get into that a little bit more. We're going to look into a few actual elements. And you can actually find a list of all the HTML elements possible out there. Some usable, some please never use. Like this big one, never use that one. On this link here, so W3 Schools, if you're learning how to be a web developer, tons of great stuff on there. So I'm obviously not going to go over everything now, but great to look at later. So before I get into some more code, just a note on organizing your code. Use a good code editor when you're starting off and figuring out how to code. I'll often see a lot of people who, they only have to code once a week, so they don't feel like downloading a whole new program. They're just going to code on like a white sheet, and because it's not worth it for them to download a new program. But I will promise you, downloading something like Sublime Text or Atom.io will make the world of a difference, and I will show you why. So if at the moment this is saved as an HTML document, if I look at it as a plain text document here, this is what some people code in. And you see how everything is white? If I wanted to quickly find that H1 that we were looking at earlier, it's a lot harder to find in here than if I have a good code editor that actually highlights everything. So you'll see all my elements are in pink, all my content is in white, all my attributes are in green, we have some links here in yellow. So everything is color coordinated. To help you find things. So really when you're looking at a web developer screen and they have this like black background with all these bright colors, and you're like, whoa, this person's doing some pretty crazy stuff, it actually is just making their job easier for them. Another great thing about good code editors is that it'll actually find your closing tag for you. So you see how when I clicked on my header there, it automatically highlighted the closing tag for me. If I erase that, right away, I know that there's a closing tag missing because I get a question mark in my sidebar and no underlined closing tag. So it's really easy to be like, oh, oops, I forgot that closing tag there. So let's break down some HTML. So every single HTML document that you'll have will have a head and a body. So this website here, I'm just going to delete this for now. So this site has a head up here and then a body down here. Our head is where we store all of our important information about the website. So similar to the way human heads work, there's a whole lot of information in there, and most of it you're not actually going to see. You just kind of, it's in there for people to kind of peel out as they like. Your body is where the actual content is going to be inside, and that's where your information renders on your website. Hi, everyone. So let's look into some actual elements. So we'll start with the P tag, or your paragraph tag. So that's just an opening P tag, a closing P tag, and that's just your paragraph. So if we look at our website here, we have a paragraph tag that says welcome to our website. And on my website here, it's rendering here. And actually, if I save that and refresh, we're not going to have any colors there. Yeah, perfect. Sorry. As I mentioned before, we have our H1 tag. So every single website will have an H1 tag, and H1 tags are important for screen readers. They're also really important for SEO purposes. Google will quickly skim through your site, find your H1 tag, and mark that as important information to pull up when you're doing SEO. And then you're going to have anywhere from H1 to H6. So those are just going from H1 most important to H6 least important. I've never seen H under H6, and if you're doing H6s, you should probably just reorganize your code a little bit. And then we have our image path. So our image tag here, this is what I was referring to as a self-closing tag. So I'm going to look at it in my text editor here. And I have my image down here. Let's just give it a lot of space. Can you guys see that? It's really tiny, eh? There we go.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, amazing. So, notice how my image tag doesn't have a closing tag, unlike my P tag does. So my P tag has my opening and closing. My image tag just lives on its own. That's because there's no actual content living inside the opening and closing tag, so it doesn't need to be closed. The content is in the source. So what this source is doing is it's just pulling the photo from, in this case, another website, and putting it onto my website right here. Often an issue I see with people's websites is that their path to their image is just wrong. So if you look at a website and it looks something like that, so it's just a tiny little broken image, it's too small again. That's because your path to your image is wrong. Those are my favorite debugging issues because they're always really easy to solve. Another element that you're going to see a lot and you'll find important is anchor tags. So an anchor tag has two important aspects to it. There's your href, and that's where the anchor is actually going. So at the moment, I have this href going to saralash.com, and then inside your opening A and your closing tag, that's what the call to action is actually going to be. So this is how you can differentiate the call to action from the actual link itself. So if we visit my website, the content says visit my website here, and we'll refresh this page. And a hot tip, if you wanted to open in a new tab, you just add target equals, open quotations, close quotations, underscore blank. If we open our website here, boom, opens in a new tab there. So that's just a little brief view into HTML tags. Does anyone have any questions so far about how HTML tags work? Yeah.
Can you just show that target?
Target blank? Yeah, for sure.
Thing that you just did. Target equals
Underscore blank. Another issue I often see on websites when people first start learning is they miss out on entering the HTTP at the beginning. Because when you're writing it into the URL, you don't use it, but the URL knows to do that. And unfortunately, your website doesn't know to do that, so you do need to keep that in. Any other questions so far? Perfect. So our head. Let's look into our head. Although the head of the website isn't important for the content that's on your site, it's really important for SEO purposes and social sharing purposes. This is where the other websites are going to get information about your website. So this head here is really, really minimal. We have our meta tag. Oh, check it out, another self-closing tag right there. Again, you don't need a meta tag to have a closing meta tag because the content is within the tag. So this first meta tag here is just telling the website what character set to use. So at the moment it's using UTF-8, and personally I only write websites in UTF-8. Maybe if you're writing in Arabic, you'd be writing in a different character set, or Hebrew, but I am not writing in that one. So. No Hebrew or...
What does that mean, UTF-8?
I'm actually not sure, to be honest. Someone programmed browsers to know what that means, and that's all I have to know. If you do not have that, have you ever visited a website and apostrophes appear as, here actually, I'll take it out. And we'll see. Because often websites without it will have apostrophes or periods appear weird. Do I have any apostrophes? Let's add some. Did anything weird happen? No. Okay. Well, I'm not going to go and figure it out right now, but trust me on this, you want that in your site. The title tag, another big one. This guy is actually where this tab gets updated. So if I change that to my cool website, refresh my browser, my tab changes. That's also the title that Google will take for your Google searches. I'm going to look a little bit further into head because I know that it's something that a lot of people are interested in. So I'm going to open the head of my website that's currently online. Oops. So this head section, it starts here, goes down to here, so it's a lot larger. A couple of things I want to point out here is the meta description. So it's meta, name equals description. The content, so content equals everything in that content. That's where Google gets its description from for your website. You'll also see there's meta tags that are OG, a property of OG title, OG site name, OG URL, and then we also have meta tags that say meta name Twitter, Twitter creator. So those are information. OG, it stands for Open Graph, and that's Facebook's Open Graph API. I kind of remember that, though, by thinking of Facebook as the original gangster of social networks. It's like way easier than Open Graph because that makes no sense to me. But original gangster is a lot easier. And then Twitter is very obvious. So with our Twitter title, Twitter description, Twitter creator, and Twitter card defined, I'm going to visit this awesome resource that Twitter's built for us. It's called the Twitter Card Validator. And if I enter my URL in here, because I have all of those meta tags defined, if I preview my card, this is what my website looks like when it's shared. So do you know when people share things on Twitter and some links get brought up and they look like this and they're really cool, and some links just stay as a link? It's because they don't have these meta tags in their website. So if you want to learn more about these meta tags, visit just Google Twitter meta tags, and you'll find tons of stuff to put into your site. They're really simple to work with once you get with it, and it makes a really big difference. I'm going to do the same thing on Facebook. So let's look at the Facebook meta tags I have defined up here. So I have my original gangster title as Sarah Lesh, my OG site name, my URL defined, and again my description and an image. So let's go to the Facebook debugger and again enter my URL there. So this gives you even more information. Tells you things that you should maybe fix about your website, so that's pretty cool. Sometimes if it's really big errors, they'll come up in bright red. No really big errors, just weird sized image, a couple of other things. And if you scroll all the way down, this is what Facebook pulls from my website when people share on Facebook. So again, pretty cool. Any questions about that so far? Awesome. So back to web development stuff. Maybe you guys have seen this before, but you can actually see the HTML of any website you've ever been to by right-clicking. Your little thing will pop up here. Go to View Page Source. A new tab will open up. And this is all the HTML from that website. So if you compare this to what I have in here, it's the exact same content. So that's pretty cool, but you can't actually do very much with that. This is another way you can look at code on a website. It's called the Web Inspector, and any modern browser will have this. I'll say that Internet Explorer is not, they built it in, but it's not the best. I would use Chrome or Firefox if you're wanting to. So you right click, and instead of going to View Page Source, you go to the very bottom and click on Inspect. And you have your Web Inspector. I love the name. It makes you feel like you're like really inspecting things, but you kind of really are. So if you click on this left corner here, this is kind of your inspector friend. And then as you kind of hover around, it'll find elements for you. So this is, I'll click on it, and it's found it for me. This is my H1 element. Cool. And pretty cool. I can live change what this says. So, hi, I'm Sarah. Let's say, hi, I'm Farah. Oh my gosh, Farah stole my site. And boom.
Yeah.
I think it's
I have
what
a
your name
website
is.
now.
Yeah, you have a website. You can do this on absolutely any site. I've had friends like change this on people's site and then take a screen capture of it and be like, what's wrong with your site? So pretty cool to do, and just nice to kind of see if you're ever questioning how you should build your site. Maybe go to a site that you think is built really well and see, okay, so they used an H1 for this tag, what did they use here? Oh, it's an H2. Okay, maybe my kind of subheading should be an H2. So So that's the web inspector, and the more you kind of get into web development, the more this is going to become your absolute best friend. So HTML was written as a means to write and share research documents. And when you look at it on its own, it really does just look like a boring research document. So let's look at my cool website. So really, it's a pretty just standard, boring site. There's a heading, there's some subheadings, there's some paragraph content. You can really see how this was something that people were like, yeah, cool, essays and stuff. But we are not building boring websites. We want to build fun websites. Actually, before I get into fun websites, I'm going to warn you that this has some inappropriate language on it, but it's kind of a satirical website that someone built because if you know the internet and its complainy ways, people love to complain about how things are breaking all the time, and a web developer somewhere was just kind of satirically making fun of how it's not the website that's breaking, it's you breaking your website, because this is what a website can look like. I'm sorry for all the swearing. I'll just scroll through quickly before I close it. Yeah, so websites, that is a website. You can build a website with just HTML. But let's make the website a pretty place with CSS. And before I move into CSS, just another break for questions about HTML. Yes?
I was wondering if you can send the link of your site.
Of my website?
Yeah, people online wanted to know if they can do the inspect element.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, actually, they can do it on any website, but if they want to do it online.
They were looking to
They
see
want to
your
put their
tabs.
name on the front.
It's just sarahlesh.com.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a website that you kind of liked how it was laid out and then just went to the inspector and copied and pasted it and used that as a
Well, to be honest, actually in my job, not a project I've worked on with Farah, but a lot of my job is at times taking someone's website and then rebuilding it in another platform so that we can use, for example, we build a lot of donation forms. So the platform that we build in hosts those donation forms, but we want the user to feel like they're in the same website when they go to this hosted site. So yes, in that case, I will just go to that website, steal all their code, and it's a little bit more difficult than just going copy paste done. But I have to say it isn't like starting from zero. So yeah.
It's also a good way to learn HTML.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I taught myself back in 2000.
Yeah, that's the nicest thing about web development is that we love open source and we love sharing. So the more you kind of dig in, the more you see that there's people sharing everything they know and they want you to build on it. That's why technology has gone as far as it has, is because we've been able to build on top of what each other know. Cool. So let's get into some CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So if you picture a cascade, it kind of starts at the top, and it could start really small, and then flows to the bottom. And that doesn't sound like it's important right now, but it's really important when you're looking into style sheets. Things at the top are something that you would keep more general, and the things at the bottom get more specific. I'll go into more detail about that in a bit. So for the most part, the same way that you would have your HTML be purely just content with no styles, for the most part you're not going to have any actual content inside your CSS. There are exceptions to that, but especially when you're first starting off, CSS is purely for styling. It's a declarative language, which means you're just declaring styles and then your website will follow those styles if you've declared it properly. And it's used for grabbing elements in your HTML and describing how you want it to be presented. If you kind of think of HTML as the structure of our house, CSS would be the design of the house. So the color of the walls, the carpets, the cupboards. Oh, spelled cupboards wrong. Sorry about that. That's how I say it. So the design we choose does affect how we build it, the same way the design you would choose for your house will affect how you build your house. But like I said before, we wouldn't build the design into our structure. I'm touching on this point a lot because in the old days of the internet, styles and content was mixed together, and people would just do all their styles in their HTML. And you do still see that a fair bit, but that shouldn't be how you build your website. They should always be separate. So just especially when you're starting off, ensure that you are keeping them separate. And you do so by keeping all of your elements, all of your styles in a .css file. This is best practice, keeping all of your styles in a separate style sheet. So if you look on my FTP here, I have my index.html, so that's all the code that I have on my website, all the content. And then my style.css here, those are the styles that I am pulling into my document. Today though, I'm going to be coding on my website.html. And I'm going to do something that's not best practice, just so that we can see everything on the same page. And I'm going to use style tags. So what these style tags are, they look just like our HTML elements, and that's because they are. But once you open your style tags, all of the content within them, your HTML document knows to read it as CSS, so you can then write CSS in there. Does that make sense to everyone? Great. So CSS is made up of rules. And within these rules, you select elements that you want to style, declare a property, and then give it a value. So in my example here, I selected my P tag, and I'm giving it a color of pink and a background of blue. So let's do that on my website.html. So I have a P tag here, a P tag here, a P tag here, a P tag here, and we're going to select all those P tags by putting P, opening a curly bracket, closing a curly bracket. It's always best practice to do every separate rule on a new line. And I'm going to give it a color, and it's unfortunately the American way of spelling color, of blue, semicolon at the end, and colon in between your property and your value. New space, I'm going to give it a property of background, colon, of pink, and then semicolon at the end. So these semicolons at the end are kind of like periods in CSS. So that's how your browser knows that this property value pair is done, and it can read either the next pair or your next rule. If you forget to close it, it won't work. Sometimes browsers are good enough to read it and it will work, but always remember to close it. So let's look at my cool website and see what it looks like. Cool. So just those few lines of code at our website. We're going to have a really beautiful website by the end of today. You can see a list of all the CSS properties, again, on W3 Schools. There are thousands of them. I don't even know all of them. Sometimes I look at people's code and I'm like, oh, I've never even heard of that before. There's again some that are deprecated and some that are still in use, so just make sure that you're keeping up on that. It will tell you in the documents if they're deprecated. And deprecated is a fancy web developer word for not used anymore. Well, I'm going to use just kind of some regular ones that you see all the time today. So I just selected all of the paragraph tags on my site. But what if I only want to select one of those paragraph tags? So if you see here, on this first paragraph tag, inside my header, I've given it a class of header paragraph. So although this is a p tag, underneath that, I'm going to give it a more specific rule. So I'm going to call out my class, do that by going dot header dash paragraph, opening my curly bracket, closing my curly bracket, and we'll give it a background of green. That didn't work. Did I spell something wrong? Oh, it's just at the top. So why did that work? I've already told all of my paragraph tags to have a background of pink, but my class of .header paragraph is getting a background of green. So that worked because my header paragraph is a more specific selector, and because it's more specific, it will work. It will even work if I put it on top. So remember how I said our style sheet is a cascading style sheet? So that means that our styles are getting read from top to bottom. So our header paragraph is defined up here as getting a background of green. I'm going to define it down here again as getting so header dash paragraph. And to give it a background of purple. So what do we think is going to happen? Is it going to be purple, pink, or green? Anyone have an answer? Purple. You're right. Let's see. Yeah. Awesome. Does that make sense so far to everyone? So that's just kind of a short peek into selecting elements. And you can select any element in your HTML. So you can select your header, and we can give it a background image. So when you're using background images, you have to define the URL. So I'm going to give it a background image of, oh right, I broke that picture. It's right down here. So now, in my header, it's looking for this URL to put as its background image. Let's see if that worked. Awesome. So things are looking real good for us over here. By default, your browser will always repeat the background image, so it will take its size, and then if it doesn't go that entire size, it will just start repeating. There are ways to fix that. I'm not going to get through that today, but if you want to look on your own, looking through background sizing, there's a website called CSS Tricks. It's a really amazing resource for almost anything you'll need to do with CSS. Developer tools. Remember our best friend, developer tools? So this developer tools here, this is going to be where you're going to start being able to debug some issues on your site. So we have all of our HTML on this side of our site. And as I'm kind of scrolling around, it's selecting the element that I'm getting over here. So let's select this element here. So my H3. And I can see it's H3 because it comes up right here. But if I look on the the right side of my screen, I have all of my styles for my CSS appearing right there. And actually, let me just show you again how I got my inspector open. So I right-clicked, went down to inspector, and boom, it pops open. And then I get to the left side of my screen, I click on my little inspector friend, click on the element that I want to get more information about. It's clicked on here. And these are all my styles. So I can edit what I want. So maybe I think that the font size is too big. So I'm going to make the font size smaller. Let's make it bigger by a couple of pixels. I can change the font family. I can give it a margin bottom. So if I want to maybe give it a bigger bottom of 10 pixels there. The only thing, oh, that's not pixels. The only thing to remember about making edits in your inspector, both inside your HTML and inside your CSS, is if you refresh the page, they're gone. So I love using the inspector to kind of get something looking perfect. And then I'll copy and paste, so you can actually just copy and paste styles right from here. And I'll copy and paste those perfect styles into my CSS folder right away so I don't forget. CSS, or actually before I go on there, was there any questions about inspector? Cool. So yes, CSS is also where we make our sites responsive. Again, because these are just declarative rules, and we are just telling our website to do things at different screen sizes, which is pretty cool. So what does it mean to have a responsive website? I think we hear that a lot, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to everyone. Basically what that means is you have a website that looks great on the projector up here. It looks good on my iPhone. It looks good on the smallest sized iPhone that there ever was. It looks good on a Nexus 5. It's responsive, so your website is built to have the best view for whoever is using your site. So if we look at this Esquire site right here, we have a pretty complicated layout on the biggest view of the website. Almost equally as complicated layout on the next size. The tablet layout, you see how it has 3 images. On the tablet size, it went down to 2 images. But the viewer is still getting all the content. It's maybe just longer scrolling. And then on mobile, it just goes to 1 column and just a longer scrolling site again. So why does responsive sites matter? I mean, if you haven't seen a bad website on your phone yet, it's pretty crazy. There's some pretty bad sites out there and unusable sites on your phone. people might be visiting on your site from an Xbox, from screen readers, from different browsers, and we want to make sure that everyone's getting the best experience for that website that they can get. You also don't know what's coming tomorrow, so there used to be CSS rules that you could just follow for different screen sizes, and say, okay, this very specific screen size will do this, that screen size will do this, so tablet this, mobile this, and desktop that, so 3 screen sizes. And that used to be good enough for everything. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore, and you actually just have to make your website a flowing website. So if we look at my website, at the moment we're on our desktop version, and as I'm resizing the screen, you see that at a certain point, it goes into 1 column, but oh, my styles here are still in 3 columns. So this is probably my tablet version. And then I'm resizing, oh, and look, I resized my font so I can still keep it 3 columns. And then at a certain point, it goes to 1 column. Based on, just based on how I thought it presented nicely. And of course, this is important because it's important for Google. Anything that's important for Google is important for us. You can actually check how Google sees your website and if they think it's mobile friendly. And Google will give you a better ranking if your website is mobile friendly. So they have on their webmasters tools a mobile friendly link. It looks like this. You just paste your URL into this search bar here, and it will give you an analysis of your site. It's really analyzing. Cool, so awesome. My website's mobile friendly, and this means it will get a higher ranking in Google. Amazing. And this is what it looks like. It even gives you a little screen cap. So testing for responsiveness. I've heard of tons of tools out there that you can use to test, but honestly, the best and easiest way to test a website is to do exactly what I just did. So you take your site at its largest value and you just pull it slowly but surely, smaller and smaller, and see what happens. And if things start to break, that's when you start to kind of move things around at different screen sizes there. You can also use your web inspector, good old web inspector. So right click down to inspect. And next to our inspector friend, there's this little device array. So if you click on that, you'll actually get a list of a bunch of different devices that you can see what your site looks like on, in case you have specific rules that are specific to sites. And you can kind of scroll through here. So that's pretty cool. So that's what my site looks like on iPhone 5. This is what it looks like on an iPad. So that's just built right into your Chrome browser. Firefox has it as well. And you actually only need HTML and CSS to have a beautiful, responsive, working website. And I'll tell you that this site, minus a couple of small interactions, is built purely in HTML and CSS. The only thing on this entire website that is using JavaScript is, oh yes, just that slow thing. To make that go slowly. So you can still make a pretty good website with just HTML and CSS. Pretty great. So hopefully this is how you guys feel right now. So JavaScript. Unlike HTML HTML and CSS, which are declarative languages. JavaScript is a programming language. The reason, so the difference between that, what I mean, is a declarative language, like I said earlier, you're just naming things, giving them properties, and the website will just listen to it. Whereas programming, you can tell different elements to do different things based on the programs that you specifically write. That sounds a little bit confusing, and to be honest, when you're first starting off, JavaScript is pretty confusing. I would say when you're first learning how to be a web developer, HTML and CSS, master those, and then step into JavaScript if you're looking to do front end. But good to know what JavaScript does, so that's why I want to touch on it a little bit today. The reason JavaScript is so popular is because all modern browsers now have it fully built into the browser. So I don't need to access another library or work in any sort of framework in order to have JavaScript working. I can just go to my website, open my inspector, go to my console. So here you have your elements. The next tab over is console. I can just write JavaScript right in here. You can also have JavaScript as external files, the same way that we would have our CSS as external files. So you would just save it as a .js file, and that's how your website knows to read it as JavaScript. Keep going there. So what JavaScript is mostly used for is for kind of interactions on a website, something to maybe add a little bit of fun to your website, or add extra interactions. For example, an opening pop-up window. I just built one on a site. I'm going to do it. So this website has that little pop-up. That's built in JavaScript. All this is just HTML and CSS, but what's making it happen is JavaScript. Validating a login, so when you're logging into Facebook or Twitter, how that's being validated is usually with JavaScript. Building a mobile hamburger menu. Do you guys know what a hamburger menu is? So, do I know of a website off the top of my head with a hamburger menu? Ooh, I think I do.
I can give you some.
Oh yeah, give me one.
BC Cancer Foundation, and then take it slow, like, or take it in.
Oh yes.
BC Cancer.
Ah,
I think they have that.
is it this one?
Yeah, and then make it,
Yeah.
or if not, you know, they have a hamburger, is it a good hamburger?
No, hamburger.
Oh, it was close to Possible Foundation then, sorry. We're still working on that one, Francis and I. Possible Foundation will, for sure. And go to one of their donation forms.
Foundation.
Yeah, and go to one of their donation forms.
All right. Donate.
Oh, it's right there.
Yeah, I know. Lost it. Let's go back. Cool. So this is actually becoming a trend on desktop sites now too, but you'll see this a whole lot in mobile sites. That is a hamburger menu. Why? Because it looks like a hamburger. So that interaction there, so when I click on this, this opens. The clicking interaction is built in JavaScript.
I think if you make it bigger, that should go away.
Oh yeah?
I think make it, I think it's just because it's down a little bit so they can kind of see.
Oh yeah. Yep.
There you go.
So yeah, so this site's built responsibly. So on certain screen sizes, this is where the menu goes. But the developer on this decided that at this screen size, there's not enough room in my browser to have all those items. So we'll just make them pop out on click. Fun decisions us developers get to make. Makes sense, right? JavaScript is a lot to understand when you're first learning, like I said. So concentrate on HTML and CSS so you don't kind of do this weird Jim Carrey face. Oh yes, we have a question.
There's a question online asking where to get JavaScript widgets.
JavaScript widgets. May I have more? Are they
Like tab panels, menus, that kind of thing.
Okay. You can look up some jQuery plugins for that.
Okay.
If you go to CodePen, CodePen.io, and search for menu, or search for anything that you would need. Yeah. This will give you a great list of code that you can take. So you see here. So this is kind of a menu. Ooh, that's cool.
That's hammer.
Yeah, and it looks like this is not even using any JavaScript. So you see, it'll break it down. This is the HTML involved in this. This is the CSS, and then if there was any JavaScript, you would take that. So if you search through CodePen for things you might like, you can probably find some working stuff there. Is there any other questions about JavaScript at all? Cool. So I know that was a whole lot and a whole little about everything. So there's still a ton to learn about HTML, and I hope that I've inspired you guys to learn more. There's tons of resources to learn more if you would like to. Online, where I first got started was using Codecademy. Codecademy really gets you involved in what the basics are of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I think they have every programming language on there at this point. Yeah, there can be a bit of a limit to what Codecademy allows you to learn before you just want to start kind of building stuff outside of their box. And that's where you probably want to go to Treehouse. I think Treehouse has a free trial, and then you'll have to start paying. And then you can also take some classes. So Ladies Learning Code, they offer intro classes to HTML and CSS, so where we'll touch on this, but it's an entire day, and by the end you'll have a website. So that's the HTML and CSS class. They have some WordPress classes, tons of stuff, and you should also check out hackerYou. That's where I went to school, so I'm going to support them. They did a great job. And thank you. I hope that you guys found this useful for your internet ways. And see you later.
A lot of people, of course, today use templates, especially like WordPress use. Like I'm a WordPress, I have a blog on WordPress, and I had somebody modify a Woo theme, the Canvas Woo theme.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think it's unlikely that I would ever be coding a website, but I came here just because, you know, there may be times when I want to make modifications to a template.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any, would that be like a whole separate kind of learning environment?
No, actually, you can take a lot of this into WordPress. Do I have a WordPress site on here? I'm not sure if I do. But in WordPress, you have a visual tab in all of your WYSIWYGs. Oh, a WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. It's like the big kind of box. So there's a visual tab, and then there's a text tab.
Yes.
And if you code in the text tab, you can move things around on your page using CSS to have a bit more of a custom site. If you have the logins to your hosting, you can actually also log into your FTP and add some things to the actual code of your website as well.
But you have to get to that point where you can have confidence.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone online? No? Cool. Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
Again, I want to thank, on behalf of all the NetSquared Toronto organizers, thank you, Sarah, for teaching us more about code. Just a heads up that this event is being recorded, especially for the live stream audience. So the recording will be on the Text of Canada YouTube channel, but then a note will be sent to the meetup group. If you're not part of the meetup group, this is how we communicate to all the NetSquared Toronto people, because that's the only way we can connect with you. So if you're not a member, please join. We have another event in April. The date escapes me, but we basically have an event every month. So if you have any questions about the next one, feel free to join the group, ask them questions. We still have some food left over, so please finish it, or else our team will follow it.
And if you do want to speak, or if you know somebody that'd be interested, please let us know. We're always looking for varied, interesting speakers as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and sorry, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna wrap this.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is actually
sorry.
on behalf of us. This is a
Oh,
small token of
thank
appreciation.
you.
Thank you,
Oh, thank you
Sarah.
so much.
All right, thanks everyone.